Another Miami Dolphins training camp practice is in the books, and we're breaking down what stood out to me on Thursday, July 25th, 2024, here on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Tip of the cap to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. We are into the weeds of practices here in Miami Gardens. A couple of practices in the books. A number of things stood out to me on the things that I'm allowed to report on based on the credentialing procedures of the NFL. You're not allowed to get too into the weeds. The credentialing procedure for the league is, unless it's an open practice to the public, like you're not even allowed to send posts during practice, which you can debate the merits of, but we're here. The Dolphins are willing to extend me the hospitality of coming down and spending some time with them at training camp. So we're going to play by the rules. We'll talk about the things that stood out that we're allowed to talk about. And there's no shortage of things. I got my little handy dandy roster here with all kinds of notations and players that popped to me and individual moments, some things on the actual roster as far as weights, listed weights. But the biggest storyline for the Dolphins in training camp is Tua Tagovailoa, and understandably so. It's the team's starting quarterback. They're negotiating a top-of-market contract. We'll talk a little bit more about Tua a little later in the show. But this edge group for Miami is front row center as it pertains to kind of the other storylines for this football team. The Dolphins have Bradley Chubb and Jaelan Phillips recovering from injuries. Shaq Barrett retires on the doorstep of training camp. I actually kind of think this group looks like it's got a lot of really exciting competition ahead of it in the coming days and weeks leading up to the start of the season. One of the stars of practice was not Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill or Raheem Mostert or Javon Holland or Jalen Ramsey, although there were some good moments for a number of those players. It was Quentin Bell was the standout for me on this day of practice for Miami, stepping up and setting a really firm edge against the run on a number of occasions. You can debate the merits of the pass rush ceiling with Quentin Bell, who's not particularly accomplished as a pass rusher at the NFL level, but there's no denying his range and speed, and there's some times where he stands up. There's some times where he's condensed a little bit tighter to an offensive tackle, so there's some alignment versatility. This was a guy that was with the team as a practice squad player last year. He crowded the edges on these outside run concepts quite a bit. And it wasn't like he was going against guys that weren't high caliber players. He's standing up Alec Ingold on the edge on an outside run to help contest and turn the run back inside. So to see that kind of emergence in practice, and I know he had a good day on Wednesday as well, it's a really exciting start to training camp for Quentin Bell. Now, this isn't the be-all, end-all, and it's not how you start, it's how you finish, but at the very least, this is a contender for some reps based off of what he's shown. If he's able to sustain it, that I'm really fascinated to see how it plays out. You look across the rest of the group, a couple of young guys, a couple of rookies. I had my eyes on a lot of the young guys that were recent draft picks for this football team the last few years. Chop and Muhammad, they stood out in good ways for different reasons. Chop Robinson moves different than any other guy. I think it's like him and a healthy Jaelan Phillips are the two guys that you look at the movement skills of those guys on the edge. And it's pretty special stuff. And you see the first step explosiveness for Chop and the motor that he's playing with right now and flying around. The defense as a whole is just flying around the practice field and doing a really nice job. And every player in media availabilities afterwards has talked about the kind of the intensity of everything that the Dolphins are doing as a football team right now. And it's showing up. And Chop Robinson's kind of at the forefront of that. But it's not just, hey, he's playing hard. It's, man, he is really getting down off that edge in a hurry. And that's as advertised what you would expect for a player like Chop Robinson and the era of which he was drafted and what the skill set seems to suggest he's capable of. He's showing some of that. Well, they still have yet to put on the pads, but your first step explosiveness is very apparent without pads. I don't need to see you put on pads to know if you're explosive or not. And he's living up to that reputation. Whereas Muhammad Kamara, you watch some of the independent indie drills with him and work with the bags and how he pops the bags and just the power in his frame. Pretty good get off, pretty good bend. He's built low to the ground. Man, it's when those hands hit the pads and you hear the pop, that's what really pops for Muhammad Kamara up close and in person thus far. But there were some other defensive line observations as well. And some of this extends beyond play. Some of this is just body types and seeing body types. And one of my critiques of Raekwon Davis the past few years as a nose tackle for the Dolphins is at 6'6", you're not really built like a nose tackle. You're not built low to the ground. You're seeing Benito Jones and Tier Tart's listed on the roster at 315 pounds. Neville Gallimore is listed on the roster at 315 pounds. I thought that was a really interesting development for a couple of guys who have not been listed at that stature. 315 is a healthy number for guys to play potentially in the A gaps and have some competition there. So I'm excited to see how that group unfolds. But these are stout bodies. These are 310, 315, 320, 330, and 6'2", 6'3". You see the physical, tangible difference when they want to cover up interior offensive linemen with bodies. They have a lot of stoutness. They have a lot of natural leverage with their body types. And, of course, Zach Sealer is a piece of this puzzle. Calais Campbell can be a piece of this puzzle when you get into pass rush situations. But when they want to go heavy and they want to line you up, I think structurally they can't rely on being at a disadvantage in the box from a numbers perspective like they did last year with Vic Fangio and expect the same results. They theoretically and conceptually have to do things differently. The fact that they went out and they've acquired the body types and you could see the body types and say, hey, these guys maybe aren't going to have the same disruptive nature to their game, but there's a bunch of different ways in which you can execute team defense and be really good against the run. And if they're hard to move and they're built low to the ground and they stay under offensive linemen, that should take care of itself in theory. Now, you have some players who did not partake in today's practice. We're going to get into them next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Going to the game is not supposed to be stressful. It's supposed to be fun to go see your favorite sporting events and concerts and comedy and theater and whatever else that is around you. If you're looking to get down to see a Major League Baseball game or go to a concert nearby, Gametime is where you need to get all of your tickets because they take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier than before. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer you get to first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets for all of your favorite local events. With all-in pricing, you can see what the total is before you put the tickets into your cart. There's no surprise fees. You can see the sight lines from your ticket before you hit purchase, so you know exactly what you're signing yourself up for. And with the Gametime ticket guarantee, they will credit you 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets in the same row and section for less somewhere else. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets with the lowest prices guaranteed. So, guys who didn't participate in practice today included Tua Tagovailoa in its entirety. He was out there in a cap, didn't have his helmet, didn't touch a ball for the first 20 minutes of practice. He did have his play sheet. He was engaged with what was happening. He was talking with Mike McDaniel. He was talking with the other quarterbacks throughout the course of practice. He was right in the middle of the huddle. So he's very plugged in what was happening. This was a departure from yesterday. He did not partake at all today in practice. What that means, I guess we'll find out. This kind of proverbial tug of war for leverage for a contract is exhausting. Every player was asked about it in their player availabilities. It is becoming a distraction from a media sense. Whether or not it's a distraction internally with how they go about their business, I have to imagine to some degree it is, no matter how much you try to make it not. Mike McDaniel, when he had his introductory presser, kind of discussed it's a distraction if you allow it to be a distraction. Well, the players are out there doing the right thing on the field, but it is exhausting, and I'm over it, as I know many of you are as well. Other players who were either limited off to the side of note. Teron Armstead did some independent work. David Long was out there working as he works his way back from the PUP. Jaelan Phillips, saw him on the bike, getting some good work in. He continues to look really good. You've seen the videos of him on social media doing some workouts at the facility. Looks like his recovery is going quite well. You also had Jordan Poyer getting some rest throughout the course of the day today as well, which was a bummer. I was kind of pumped to see Jordan after what was a pretty strong and hard to miss presence on the first day of practice. So I was hoping to get to see him with a follow suit, but we didn't get it. Now, one player who did participate in practice, Javon Holland, who had the scare on Wednesday where he got flipped on a play. He was back out on the field. He said he met with the media on Thursday after practice, said it was kind of a thigh contusion for Javon. So nothing really to be worried about. I think Javon looks great. I had a chance to sit in on some Javon Holland media availabilities in each of last years of training camp. He looks a little leaner this year. I'm curious what that means as far as his range, explosiveness. Not that any of those things were problems for him last year, but that's kind of a scary thought if he's got another level that he can tap into. So that was kind of an observation that I had from Javon, seeing him at this press availability today. I would say from a good performance perspective, you had in the secondary, Elijah Campbell had a leaping interception, undercut a pass intended for Durham Smythe, which was a good high point of the football. It was a good angle. He almost had another interception on a ball that was broken up by a defender that was underneath of him in coverage. He was coming from the top down. So more than one occasion of being in position to make plays on the ball for Elijah Campbell. I thought that was a really strong performance from him. Kader Kohu had a couple of nice moments as this practice went along as well in coverage. And Jordan Brooks, to come back to the second level on the defense, really looking the part of a player that can get downhill. And obviously we're seeing this without David Long for the time being. David looked pretty good in the workouts that I saw him doing as well. So I can't imagine that is going to be a long-term hurdle for him as a player as well. Try to keep my eyes on the offensive line to some degree. I'm not going to get into who was lining up where or anything like that, but I did happen to notice Patrick Paul on a few occasions, just the total size of the player engulfs guys at times because of just how large and massive he is. So I was encouraged to see that from him. Also on the offensive line, I thought Austin Jackson, Ryan Hayes were guys that I had positive notes for their contributions on my roster sheet as well throughout the course of today's practice. Now, you did not have your starting quarterback. What did that mean for quarterback performances? It's a mixed bag. I think at times it made it a little challenging to evaluate the receivers. There were some instances of guys that looked to have a step down the field, the consistency of those ball placement, the timing of it. It was noticeable that there was an interruption as far as the consistency in those moments. And what this sets the stage for, of course, if this hold in continues for an extended period of time, is something that ties into one of the central themes that we've heard Tyreek Hill talk about on more than one occasion. And Alec Ingold also touched on in today's player availabilities, which was sustained drives and running the football. We're going to get into that next here on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience are not just the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the dub. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guarantee Fit available only to U.S. customers. So as we're looking for more at training camp, especially if the absence of Tua Tagovailoa continues to be felt in the way of a hold in from a negotiation and leverage standpoint, I want to see when the pads come on. I want to see what this running game looks like with another year of time in the system, with Jack Driscoll added to the mix as a guy to compete on the edge, with Patrick Paul in addition to Kendall Lamb and Teron Armstead and Keon Smith and also Jackson, and Aaron Brewer now is at the heart of the offensive line in the middle as the team's new center for this upcoming season. The continued focus on possessing the ball, sustained drives, longer scoring drives being a point of emphasis that they've talked about as far as controlling the flow of the game a little bit more and helping their defense out by possessing the football. This is where I want to see, when the pads come on, how this offense can kind of counter how fast and aggressive this defense has been through the first couple of days without pads, right? You're never going to go full contact, or maybe you will go full contact, but it's once in a blue moon in training camp because you don't want to bang yourself up against your own guys. And you want to be ready for when you start playing for keeps, but you're certainly not going to go live tackling all the way to the ground in a practice setting. But when you put the pads on, it does change the execution of what you're doing. And for all of this focus and all of the players that are talking about being consistently churning out plays and possessing the ball, that is where I've kind of decided, after seeing how fast and aggressive the defense looks, even the guys on the edge setting the edge of the defense, where we had that question of how ready are all of these guys going to be to play if your top few guys aren't ready to go for the start of the regular season. They look good. Now let's put pads on and see what it looks like. That is certainly where you're able to maybe counterbalance some of the loss of your starting quarterback for whatever time in the preseason it takes you to get that whole thing sorted out. Now, I am looking to see from Tua's perspective, I would imagine this is a point of no return for this, at least until if there's no progress made, when you decide you have to put the negotiation behind you and start getting ready for the start of the regular season. But I can't imagine a move like this to practice and partake and then pull that back off the table is going to be followed with you saying, hey, you know what? Today, I think I'm going to do the stuff again. And then tomorrow, I'm not going to do, the day after that, I'm not going to do the stuff again. Right? Like, you partook in a selected basis, and then you pulled yourself back. I can't imagine the reps to Skylar Thompson or Gavin Hardison or Mike White are going to bridge that gap. That lack of presence is felt from a passing game perspective. I don't think there's a question there as far as the precision of everything that happens, the timeliness of everything happening. So that does kind of work out into his favor as far as trying to influence the team to help close the gap that does exist. Kind of my early impressions on that, though, would be you don't get the sense that things are too far apart. And I think when you're going to get to the end of the rainbow here, I think everybody's going to kind of look back on the timing of everything. And that may be the biggest question is why and how the urgency didn't get kicked into a high gear until now. Now, ultimately, it is still July 25th. It's still early. We'll be looking to see how this plays out, if there is more urgency from the two sides to meet in the middle, if there's any willingness to meet in the middle. But expectations for the Dolphins offense certainly tempered for the time being. So now my eyes and focus aren't necessarily on the wide receivers right now. I'm instead looking at, okay, how can the other elements of this offense operate? And that's where, as we get our next chunk of data and performances, my eyes will be. Hope you guys enjoyed this training camp update from South Florida. I'm Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Make it a great rest of your day. I will be back to talk to you all again soon. Go Dolphins.